My name is Kia, and I've always seen the world through a lens. Photography is more than a job for me. It's a passion. Capturing people's raw emotions, their fleeting smiles, or that moment when a person's eyes light up, it's magic. While some people are out there going on dates or attending endless parties, I prefer to lose myself in my work. It's a busy life. I've been so absorbed in building my photography career that I've barely had time to think about my personal life. While other girls my age are finding their forevers on dating apps or through setups, I'm chasing clients and editing photos until 3 a.m. Don't get me wrong. I've had my flings, but they've always fizzled out quicker than a sparkler on New Year's Eve. Besides, my relationship with my camera, it's stable. It doesn't flake out or ghost me. It's always there, focused and reliable. One day, I was working on a photo shoot for a couple, an absolutely adorable young pair who couldn't stop holding hands and looking at each other like they were in some indie romance movie. It was fun capturing their happiness, but I was running late on delivering the photos to them. So, in the midst of juggling deadlines, I decided to edit the pictures while having lunch at a nearby cafe. A combination of multitasking and caffeine is my version of bliss. While I was deeply immersed in adjusting the brightness and contrast of a shot, a man sat down at the table next to mine. I barely noticed him at first. I was in my zone, cropping, resizing, and perfecting, but then I sensed someone glancing at my laptop screen. With an awkward chuckle, I turned my head to find a man, maybe a decade older than me, with an air of charm and confidence that was impossible to ignore. He wasn't just handsome. No, this guy had a whole aura, tall, well-dressed, and that kind of laugh that draws you in, making you want to hear what he has to say. I hadn't even spoken to him yet, and I could already tell he had stories worth listening to. His salt and pepper beard didn't hurt either. "You've got an eye for people," he said, gesturing to my screen. "Those photos look alive." I blushed. Sure, I get compliments about my work, but something about his words made me feel seen, like he wasn't just commenting to be polite. We started talking, and before I knew it, I was telling him all about my photography, my love for candid moments, and how I was constantly chasing that perfect shot that captured people's true selves. He seemed genuinely interested in my portfolio, scrolling through my photos and nodding in approval. And then we talked about him. His name was Daniel, and he had a career in consulting, something vague and corporate that I didn't fully grasp. But what struck me wasn't what he did. It was how he carried himself, the way he filled the space around him with an effortless confidence. It felt like he was comfortable everywhere, like the cafe was his personal living room, and we were old friends catching up. We exchanged numbers before we left, and before I even knew what was happening, we were meeting up again. Coffee turned into drinks, drinks turned into long conversations, and long conversations led to, well, you can guess. But like most things in life, it wasn't built to last. After we slept together, something changed. At first, I couldn't put my finger on it, but it was there, this subtle shift in how he texted, how he spoke to me, how often he wanted to meet up. His once warm texts turned colder. The messages that used to come with cheeky winks and cute emojis became short, factual replies. The spontaneous hangouts that had once felt thrilling now felt like a chore to him. "Sorry, busy," he'd text back whenever I suggested meeting up, followed by a vague promise to catch up soon. Soon turned into never. I was left wondering if it was something I did or said. My friends told me to let it go, that men like Daniel were great in the short term but weren't built for anything long-lasting. "You're better off without him," they assured me. And I believed them, sort of. Work kept me busy as usual. I buried myself in photo shoots and editing sessions, trying to push Daniel out of my mind. Maybe it was for the best, but deep down it still stung. I had thought there was something special there, some kind of connection, even if it was fleeting. Fast forward to a few weeks later, and I received a new booking, a family photo shoot. It was a classic setup. 3 kids, a pregnant wife, and a doting husband. The kind of family that makes you think of holiday cards with matching sweaters and perfectly staged smiles. I was excited. Family shoots were always fun, especially with kids involved. I arrived early at the studio to prep everything. Props, backdrops, lighting. I even brought out the classic alphabet blocks for the kids to play with while we got them to sit still. The session was set to be a breeze. Then they arrived. The children came running in first, 3 bright-eyed little ones, full of energy and laughter. Following them was the wife, glowing with her pregnancy, her hands resting on her round belly, looking every bit the perfect mother-to-be. But as I turned to greet the husband, the blood drained from my face. It was Daniel. The same Daniel I had been with just weeks ago. The same Daniel who ghosted me without so much as an explanation. And now, standing before me with a wedding ring on his finger, he was the proud father-to-be of a fourth child. Our eyes met, and for a moment, time stopped. His face turned pale as well, and I could see the panic flicker in his eyes. But he quickly masked it with a smile, a tight-lipped, "Please don't make," this awkward kind of smile. The tension between us was thick enough to cut with a knife, but his wife, completely oblivious, all smiles as she ushered the kids into the studio. I tried to compose myself. I'm a professional, right? I've dealt with crying babies, toddlers throwing tantrums, and once, even a full-grown man who refused to smile because his hair didn't look right. But this was something new. "Hey, nice to meet you all," I said, plastering on my best photographer smile while my heart raced like I'd just run a marathon. Daniel nodded stiffly, avoiding eye contact. His wife, though, was as friendly as could be. "This is such a special time for us," she said, rubbing her belly affectionately. "We're so excited to capture these moments before the baby arrives." I nodded, still reeling from the revelation that her husband, my Daniel, was the father of those kids and the soon-to-be father of another. As I arranged the family in front of the camera, I could feel Daniel's eyes on me, as if he were silently begging me to keep quiet. Every time I adjusted the lighting or checked the angles, I caught his furtive glances. The kids, blissfully unaware of the tension, were giggling and playing with the props, and his wife? She beamed, radiant and completely unaware of the emotional storm brewing behind the camera. But the moment that nearly broke me was when she turned to Daniel and said, "Isn't she such a talented photographer? We should hire her for all our future family photos." I nearly dropped my camera. By the time the session ended, I had taken enough family portraits to fill a year's worth of Christmas cards. I was trying to pack up quickly, my mind racing, when Daniel's wife walked over to me. "Thank you so much. These photos are going to mean the world to us," she said, glowing with happiness. "Of course," I replied, forcing a smile that I hoped didn't look as strained as it felt. "I'll have the photos ready for you in a couple of days." Then, to my horror, Daniel walked up as well. "We appreciate your time, Kia." "Really," he said, his tone flat, eyes still avoiding mine. His wife looked between us, sensing a weird vibe. "Wait, do you two know each other?" Before I could respond, Daniel quickly interjected. "Oh, yeah, we met at a cafe once. She was working on some photos and we got to talking. Small world, right?" I nodded along, praying to the universe that this conversation would end soon. Later that night, as I sat in front of my laptop, editing the photos from the session, I received a message. It was from Daniel. "Daniel, Kia, I know this is weird. I'm sorry for everything. I didn't plan for any of this." I stared at the message, my hands hovering over the keyboard. Part of me wanted to ignore him, delete the text, and move on. But curiosity got the better of me. Why didn't you tell me you were married? Or that you had 3 kids? Or that your wife was pregnant? There was a long pause before he responded. "Daniel, it's complicated. I didn't mean for things to get this far. I was just lost for a while. Things weren't great at home. I didn't know how to deal with it. I felt a mix of anger and pity boiling inside me. I wasn't sure what I had expected, but it certainly wasn't this half-hearted excuse." Yet, before I could respond, he sent another message. "Daniel, look, I know I screwed up, but can we meet? Just to talk. I owe you an explanation." Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet him. We met at the same cafe where everything had started. It felt surreal, sitting across from him again, knowing now the full truth about his life. Daniel looked tired, almost defeated. "I didn't want to hurt anyone," he began, his voice low. I wasn't happy at home. My wife and we'd grown distant. I felt like I was trapped in this perfect picture of a family, but it wasn't real. And then I met you, and for the first time in a long while I felt alive. I folded my arms, trying to keep my emotions in check. "So what? You thought you'd just have a little fling on the side to make yourself feel better? And now what? You think I'm just going to forgive you?" He shook his head. "No, I don't expect that. I just wanted to apologize. I know I handled things terribly, and I'm sorry for dragging you into this mess. For a moment, I considered what he was saying. He seemed genuinely remorseful, but that didn't change the fact that he had lied to me. That he had used me to escape his own problems. I can't be a part of this, I finally said. You need to figure things out with your wife and your family. I won't be dragged into your mess any further. Daniel nodded, looking down at his hands. I understand. In the weeks that followed, I focused on my work, trying to put the whole situation behind me. I threw myself into new projects, working with couples, families, and even some quirky solo portraits for local artists. My camera became my refuge again, a way to disconnect from the chaos of real life. One day, I received a message from Daniel's wife, the wife. My heart raced as I opened it, expecting the worst. Wife. Hi, Kia. I just wanted to thank you again for the beautiful photos. They're perfect. I had no idea Daniel knew you before, but I'm glad he chose you to capture this moment in our lives. Funny how things work out sometimes, huh? I stared at the message for a long time. I couldn't bring myself to respond. Instead, I closed the app and let out a long, shaky breath. Just when I thought the drama was behind me, something unexpected happened. I received a call from an anonymous number. When I picked up, the voice on the other end said, Kia, this is Lucy, Daniel's other wife. It felt like the ground had dropped from beneath me. Other wife.
What?
Look, she continued. I'm reaching out because I think you need to know the full story. Daniel has been living a double life. You're not the only one he's been involved with, and I'm not the only wife. My mind was spinning. How deep did this rabbit hole go? Lucy revealed everything. Daniel had been juggling multiple families, different lives in different cities. His charm and charisma weren't just for me. They were for everyone. He was like some kind of suburban James Bond, living multiple lives while keeping each one compartmentalized. I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of it all. The man who had ghosted me? He was playing a game far more complicated than I ever imagined. In the end, I decided not to involve myself any further. I had gotten the closure I needed, and now it was time to focus on my future. One without Daniel and his twisted life. Life went on, and I found peace in my work, my friends, and eventually in love again. But this time, I made sure to dig deep into their past before falling for their charm.